This video is brought to you by me. For $1 a month, you can support the channel directly and help me keep doing what I love. Thanks for watching and supporting. Not long ago, I posted a video about Midnight Club 2. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting to see where the series started before it evolved into the kinds of games that the series eventually became known for. While it didn't have a set of licensed vehicles, the game introduced mechanics and ideas that would be carried forward into later entries. The idea of giving vehicles special abilities based on your progression, like slipstream turbo and weight distribution, letting you drive around multiple cities modeled after real-life locations, and giving distinct feeling to each type of vehicle, came from the original two releases. So with a newfound respect for Midnight Club 2, I decided, based on a few comments I received, to dive right into Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition. I was surprised to see some mild polarization about the kind of game Midnight Club 3 was compared to 2. I always assumed 3 was the fan favorite, but based on my small sample size, I found that you either fall into one of two parties. You're someone who loves 2, or you're someone who loves 3. While the core of each release is a street racing game fueled on speed and adrenaline, these two games are pretty different in execution. My main goal for this video is to hone in on where Midnight Club 3 diverged from 2's formula, while also talking about what I really liked about it. Buckle your seatbelts, because my driving is rough. Probably the biggest change between 2 and 3 is the addition of licensed vehicles. While the second Midnight Club included cars and bikes influenced by real ones, there really is nothing like having real-life cars to drive through real-life cities. Midnight Club 3 also gets far more granular with its vehicle classes because the sheer variety of vehicles overflows from the simple muscle, tuner, and bike distinctions from the second game. In the base version of Midnight Club 3, there are more than 6 real-life makes and models to play with, and if you played the remix version that came out later as a budget title with extra content, the number of vehicles eclipses 70. I love the selection here, and it was really exciting to see some cars not normally represented in street racing games. I jumped at the idea of creating the ultimate racing machine out of an El Camino. It's just not a model you see often in games, especially in arcade racers. Of course, not every car here is a deep cut. There are plenty of popular cars from the street racing scene at the time, like the Toyota Supra, the Mitsubishi Lancer Evo, and the Nissan Skyline, and that's just the tuner class. The muscle class is full of classics and then new models like the Corvette, the Pontiac GTO, and the Dodge Charger. We also have 2 different classes of motorcycles, choppers, and racing bikes. Those are exactly what they sound like. But where we reach the truly uncharted waters for Midnight Club is the inclusion of an exotic family, a luxury sedan family, and a racing truck/SUV family. The exotics are your high-end vehicles, your Lamborghini Gallardos, your Saleen S7s, and your McLaren P1s. Luxury sedans are 4-door speed machines like the Chrysler 300 or the Mercedes SL55. And last but not least, your SUVs consist of hulking beasts like the Cadillac Escalade or the entire line of Hummers. Like in Midnight Club 2, each type of vehicle feels incredibly different from all the others, allowing you to focus on your favorite kind of car, or you can always keep things fresh by jumping in between them. The muscle cars are powerful and slippery, so learning how to fling them around corners without completely eating shit becomes satisfying and fun. They feel springy and weighty, and while they weren't always the ideal choice for some races, I probably had the most fun in the game with the Fleet Line and the Corvette. On the other end of the spectrum, there are nimble tuners that have high acceleration at the expense of top speed initially. They have much more grip around turns than the muscle cars, so there's a smaller chance of losing speed and spinning out trying to make a 90-degree turn. Motorcycles allow you to get high acceleration and top speeds early at the expense of having to worry about being thrown off your bike when hitting a car or a wall. While you can max out your damage meter in cars and lose precious seconds of time waiting for it to respawn, bikes were much harder to deal with if you're unsure about your ability to drive them. I personally didn't love the bikes in Midnight Club 2, I also don't love the SUVs in 3, but that's mostly a personal preference and I'm glad that they're here for the people who do like them. Additionally, the cars you have access to are rated on an alphabetical system from D to A. These classes usually contain cars that max out at similar stats after maximum upgrades. The D-Class cars start off slowest, and upgrading them will give them a modest amount of speed. On the other end of that is the A-Class. You can expect to find vehicles maxing out the top speed and acceleration stats right off the lot, meaning your performance upgrade options are limited. To me, the biggest challenge of the game was weighing the pros and cons of each class to figure out what suits the races and your particular style the best. By the late game, I found getting into the Class A exotics, which really didn't have any sort of weaknesses, made the game a lot easier than the mid-game. It was still enjoyable, but being able to both drive a car at 200 miles an hour and not have to worry about losing control made the game a lot less strategic. While you have the opportunity to keep moving up the list of classes, it is worthwhile to keep different vehicles of different types and classes in order to enter specific tournaments or racing clubs. Many side events require you to use a tuner or a muscle car to join them, and it's worth your while to have a rotation of vehicles you like using in order to play the game for all it's worth. New to the series is also deep car customization. It was a feature I was really shocked was missing from Midnight Club 2, given how ubiquitous it is in street racing games from the 2000s. To be quite honest, I'm usually overly analytical about money in games, especially racing games. My friends would design their starter cars to be functional pieces of art where, outside of the color collection, I wouldn't touch decals or spoilers or other cosmetics until I'd earn enough money to buy faster cars I'd be sticking with for a while. My argument was that I shouldn't spend money on making my car look nice if it means taking more time to get a better car. But given how big of a feature this was for Midnight Club 3, I decided to really give it a shot at least, and I loved it immediately. MC3 makes customizing your car accessible while giving you total control over everything from front to back. You can choose from multiple kinds of paint types, lower your car's front and rear independently of one another, cover the car in different vinyl designs, give it underbody neon, change the color of the nitrous boost that comes out of the tailpipe, and so on. It's a fun system that makes it really easy to give your car a unique personality and character. I spent a lot more time than I usually do and a lot more in-game cash than I usually spend on customizing my cars to make them look like something straight out of 2004. It made scrapping them for cash for new cars weigh on my heart a little bit, but at least they'll be immortalized in this video. Pour one out for the sad sacks who bought these cars after me. The Carfax would not be kind. In addition to the licensed vehicles and deep customization, special abilities were added that are linked to different types of cars you drive. Muscle cars and classics earn the ability to roar, which sends a shockwave out and disrupts traffic while sending your opponents flying. This, in my humble opinion, is the most overpowered ability in the game. If you're on a straightaway battling it out towards the finish, just blast your opponents out of the way with a scream and secure your victory. Following Roar in the power department is Aggro, which turns your car invincible for a short period of time while allowing you to bulldoze obstacles in your path, leaving death and destruction in your wake. I mean, probably, this game is rated T for teen, but the death is implied. Aggro can be used by SUVs and luxury sedans. Lastly is Zone, used by tuners and exotics. Zone allows you to slow down time in order to finely tune your driving. I barely used it. I'm sure it's helpful for some people, but I always wished I had Aggro or Roar instead. The trade-off for this was worth it though because the tuners were still valuable cars to drive. Each of the abilities are charged by playing in a way that suits each vehicle type. Roar is charged by power sliding in your muscle car, making it worthwhile to hit turns fast and slide your way through them. Aggro is charged by driving through debris and ramming other cars in traffic, a major perk of driving SUVs and sedans. Zone is charged by driving fast and safe. Boo! If you compare this to the abilities in Midnight Club 2, they're really arcadey. In that game, every vehicle was able to unlock skills that came with progressing through the game. Weight distribution and the two-wheel driving were all usable no matter what you were in, making it much more reliant on you to drive well than having a Roar to bail you out of a mistake. In that sense, Midnight Club 2 emphasizes your skill. It also allowed you to drive around 3 cities, LA, Paris, and Tokyo. Each of those cities were completely different from one another and posed their own challenges in exaggerated ways. They were built around the possibility of driving up ramps, getting big air, and driving on rooftops in some cases. I've never been to any of the cities in Midnight Club 2, so I can't really speak on how accurately they were digitized, but I can say the maps on offer were great and had their own distinct feel and strategy to attack them. If you want to hear more about that in depth, you can go and watch that video linked above and at the end of this video. In Midnight Club 3, all of the cities feel a little bit more rooted in reality. There are still some opportunities for big air, but you're not going to be driving on rooftops like before. Instead, each city was chosen for its place in American car culture. Detroit is Motor City, and for a long time it was the heart of vehicle production in the US. Atlanta was chosen for its popularization of modifying and customizing cars, and San Diego was selected for being a major hub of street racing at the time. Unlike with Midnight Club 2, I actually have visited one of the cities in MC3, Atlanta. I didn't really add much stock to that because video game cities, especially in 2004, weren't all that accurate. I expected Midnight Club 3 to be widely the same until a familiar, unmistakable sight popped up. The Vortex, an immediately recognizable restaurant known for their multi-thousand-calorie bypass burgers in the middle of Little Five Points, marked by a hypnotic skull, popped up. I even got to drive through it. So while it's only one location I've been to personally, I'm sure there are more similar little nods and references to the real cities sprinkled throughout. Driving around the cities is also incredibly fun. While they're based on true areas, the way the alleys and streets and shortcuts flow into each other among the dozens and dozens of races makes the cities feel built for racing. In fact, it's almost harder to drive on the rare, rigid circuit tracks than it is to blast your way through the city streets. The selection of vehicles mixed with the fun cities creates this incredibly fluid experience. I don't think I've played a truly great racing game for the channel since Need for Speed Most Wanted in July of 2019. Has it really been 3 years since I started this channel? I brought in 8-Bit Jesus to talk about the soundtrack to this game because, as it would turn out, she grew up on a lot of the music that appears in Midnight Club 3. The time between Midnight Club 2 and 3 meant the spirit of the soundtrack would change too. Heavy techno laced Midnight Club 2, urging you to keep the pedal down like an overly pushy Soul Cycle instructor. Midnight Club 3 shifted to a track list heavy on licensed hip-hop music, and most of the loading screens also use beats from New Orleans rappers and Big Timers alums Manny Fresh and Birdman. It was so distinctive a soundtrack that it caught 8-Bit Jesus' attention pretty quickly. And now, 8-Bit Jesus with the weather.
I was sitting in Under 10's office studying, and song after song I knew kept playing. I kept distracting myself trying to guess where the beat during loading screens came from, and I was mostly right, obviously. Some of the highlights were Real Big by Manny Fresh, Get Your Shine On by Birdman, Welcome to Jamrock by Damian Marley, Damn It Man by Pitbull, and Like Glue by Sean Paul. I was really surprised by how many popular songs from New Orleans were on it. I grew up here, I grew up on these songs, and I definitely didn't expect some of them to show up in a game together. It's a soundtrack of its time. It had a lot of hits and popular songs from 2004. I mean, Jimmy Eat World is on here. Being completely biased as someone who hasn't played many games with licensed soundtracks, it's probably the best soundtrack I've heard in a game. I mean, who wouldn't want to drive through the Vortex in a Lambo blasting Overnight Celebrity by Twista?
Midnight Club 3 reminded me why I love street racing games in the first place. It reinvigorated my love for the genre and sets a high bar for what can be done in it. I adore this game. I really do. I might even go back and finish the Tokyo Challenge included on the Remix Edition that adds a tweaked version of the map from MC2. But why do some people prefer Midnight Club 2 over 3? Well, normally I would say you should ask them, but I think there are enough differences that they really stand out and make it clear how you can enjoy 2 compared to 3. First off, the rival drivers you face have more personality in 2. While I don't really care for them, their snarky attitudes sure make it satisfying to beat them. Additionally, trading licensed cars for original ones means that devs could take creative liberties on how fast they go and how much you can destroy them. In Midnight Club 3, they rarely get anything more than scratches on them whether you trade paint with opponents or drive straight into a wall. And while I really like the cities in 3 along with how naturally everything melds into raceways, I miss some of the novelty of flying above Paris or carefully driving under a Ferris wheel or jumping from boat to boat across a waterway in Tokyo. I think there's a solid argument to be made about why someone would prefer 2 to 3. It emphasizes the arcade and arcade racer, where 3 leans a little bit more into realistic, quote-unquote, depictions of cities and cars. if you take away the car abilities. While I personally love Midnight Club 3 with all my heart, I don't blame someone who likes 2 more. So which do you prefer? Leave a comment down below telling me which party you fall into. If you like the video, please leave a like on it. It helps me out a ton. If you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe and the bell to make sure you're notified whenever I post. Lastly, if you want to support the channel directly, head on over to my Patreon in the description below. For $1 a month, you get early access to my videos and some special content you can't get anywhere else. I'd like to take a minute to thank my higher tier patrons, Andrew Lang, Andrew Elmore, Okayla, Just Jessica, and 8-Bit Jesus. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.
I ate here!